The wind howled over the frozen ridge outside Pine Hollow, carrying a biting scent of pine and old snow. Somewhere ahead, a German shepherd moved slowly, dragging something heavy through the deep white. Officer Eli Carter, called here for a routine patrol, watched in silence from his truck, breath curling in the cold air. The blanket it pulled was old, worn, and stained, the fabric trembling with each step. Carter's chest tightened when the dog stopped near a mound in the snow and looked up at him with strange, pleading eyes. What lay beneath was something Eli was not prepared for. If you're drawn into this story, remember to like and subscribe for more deeply crafted tales. The road into Pine Hollow was barely more than a dirt track, choked with snow and ice. 2 miles from the last cluster of houses, the forest swallowed the world whole. Officer Eli Carter kept his truck light on low as the tires crunched over frozen gravel, his breath visible in slow, deliberate clouds. Somewhere ahead, the German shepherd's low growl cut through the wind. Eli had been with the Pine Hollow Police Department for 8 years, long enough to know when something was wrong without needing a report. But nothing in his training prepared him for what he saw now. Through the windshield, he caught the sight of the dog, large and muscular, its coat thick with frost. It was dragging something heavy, a blanket through the snow. The blanket's edges fluttered against the ground, stained and ragged. The dog's movement was deliberate, almost painful, as if the burden were more than its body could carry. Eli parked the truck with a hiss of brakes, the tires slipping slightly on the icy track. He stepped out, boots crunching in snow deeper than his knees. The wind cut his face, sharp as knives, but he ignored it. The dog stopped halfway up a slope, turning its head to look back at him. Those eyes, dark, intense, almost human, fixed him in place. Ranger, Eli said softly, though the name was not his own invention. It came out instinctively, carried from years before when he had partnered with the same animal. The shepherd gave no reply except another low growl, stepping closer to the mound it had been dragging toward. Eli crossed the snow toward the dog, the air around him smelling faintly of iron and pine. As he approached, the outline under the blanket became clearer. It was bulky, a form, a body, tightly wrapped and concealed. His boot stopped an arm's length away, the cold pressing into his bones. "Easy, boy," he murmured, pulling his gloves tighter. Ranger's fur was crusted with ice where it pressed against the blanket. Eli crouched, brushing snow from the edge of the fabric. Beneath was not just cold and fabric, but the unmistakable weight of something human. His breath caught. Slowly, with hands that trembled more than he liked to admit, Eli pulled back the blanket. There was a child inside, no more than 7 years old, pale, barely breathing, curled into himself with a thin layer of frost on his face. His clothes were torn and soaked, and his small chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. The boy's eyes opened slowly, revealing a depth of fear Eli couldn't place. They were dark, wet, and strangely still. Eli swallowed hard. "Hey, you're safe now." His voice cracked. Ranger nudged the boy gently with his nose, growling softly, not in anger, but in warning. The boy flinched but didn't move away. Eli pulled his radio free. "Dispatch, this is Carter. I've got a situation at mile marker 12, North Ridge. Possible frostbite on a child. Need EMS immediately." His voice was steady, but inside his chest felt like it would collapse. As he spoke, the boy shifted slightly, mumbling something incoherent under his breath. Ranger growled again, stepping between Eli and the child. It wasn't aggression, it was protectiveness. Eli noticed a small leather strap on the boy's wrist, engraved with faint letters. He couldn't make them out in the dim light of the snow. The sound of approaching sirens cut the stillness. Eli kept his attention fixed on the boy, watching Ranger circle protectively. Something about the way the dog moved, slow, deliberate, wary, made him uneasy. Ranger wasn't just guarding the boy. He was waiting for something. Moments later, EMTs arrived, cutting through the snow with their equipment. Eli stepped back, letting them work, though his eyes never left the child. One of the paramedics, a young woman with tired eyes, pulled the boy gently into her arms, murmuring reassurances. Ranger stayed at the edge, growling softly until the boy was secure. Only then did he retreat a few steps, staring at Eli with an expression Eli couldn't name. The paramedic turned toward him. "Where did you find him?" Eli hesitated. "Up the ridge. With the dog." He looked back toward where Ranger had gone, disappearing slowly into the snowfall. "Something's off about this. I've known Ranger a long time. He wouldn't do this for just anyone." The paramedic frowned but said nothing, calling in updates to their crew. Eli stayed silent, his mind turning over possibilities. Why was Ranger here? Why had the dog dragged the boy through the snow instead of barking for help? And most importantly, who had left him there? The paramedics loaded the boy into the ambulance. Eli followed, but Ranger was already gone. No tracks in the snow beyond a certain point. Just gone. The wind swelled, carrying something cold and unspoken into Eli's bones. By the time Eli returned to his truck, the ridge was empty. No sign of Ranger. No sign of the blanket. Only silence and a growing unease that gnawed at him. At the station later, Eli couldn't stop thinking about the boy. Dispatch confirmed the child was alive, though hypothermic and unconscious. His identity was unknown. No missing person report matched his description. A search began, but nothing matched the urgency in Eli's gut. He replayed the scene in his mind. Ranger's eyes, the blanket, the ridge. Something about it was wrong. Something was being hidden. That night, Eli sat at his desk, staring at a faded photo tucked in his notebook. A picture of Ranger as a young dog, in full police duty. Beneath it, in neat handwriting, were words that sent a chill through him. Trust no one. Protect the boy. Eli closed the notebook slowly. He knew the investigation had only just begun. Outside, the wind rose again. Somewhere in the dark, Ranger was still out there. The next morning, Pine Hollow woke under a gray sky, the air brittle and heavy with frost. Snow drifted slowly from low-hanging clouds, blanketing the town in stillness. Officer Eli Carter arrived early at the station, boots crunching against icy concrete, coffee still steaming in his hands. The office smelled of old paperwork and brewing coffee. But for Eli, the scent was drowned in unease. At his desk, the boy's file sat open. Still no name, no ID, no clues, just a sterile report. Unidentified juvenile, severe hypothermia, rescued from North Ridge, no witnesses. The paramedics' notes described frostbite, dehydration, and shock, but there was something else Eli noticed. A peculiar mark on the boy's wrist where the leather strap had been removed. A faint bruise, shaped like a symbol, a circle with 3 intersecting lines. Eli frowned, leaning closer to the photo attached to the report. The boy's face was pale and fragile under the hospital's harsh lights, but his eyes were open, wide and wary. They seemed to look past the camera to something unseen. Captain Harlan stepped in without knocking, his heavy boots echoing through the office. His presence was always authoritative, and his expression unreadable. "Carter," he said, leaning on Eli's desk, "I heard you found something unusual on the ridge last night." Eli stood. "It's more than unusual, sir. The boy, no name, no family. And there's that symbol on his wrist. Ranger was guarding him like he was his own. I've never seen him act like that before." Harlan glanced toward the photo, and then at Eli. "Dogs sense things we can't. But you're stirring up trouble talking about it. Keep it in mind, but focus on the facts." Eli nodded, but didn't look convinced. Harlan left, but his words lingered. Focus on the facts. Like the facts were enough to explain the blanket, the boy, and the shadow at the ridge. By midday, Eli was back on the ridge. The snowfall had thickened, muffling sound. His boots cut fresh tracks into white powder. The air smelled of wet pine and something sharper, like iron. The ridge felt different in daylight. It was quieter, stranger. Ranger had vanished without trace. No paw prints leading away. Halfway up the slope, Eli noticed a faint disturbance in the snow, a trail where something heavy had been dragged. He knelt, brushing snow aside. Beneath was the earth, frozen, scratched, and marred. Something had been torn from this place. Something important. His radio buzzed. Dispatch calling. He ignored it, focused instead on the ridge. His eyes caught movement, Something dark at the edge of the tree lean. A shadow or maybe a figure. Eli moved cautiously forward, hand on his holster, but the shape melted into the trees before he could get a good look. When he returned to his truck, the station called again. This time, the voice was urgent. "Officer Carter, this is dispatch. The boy has woken, but he refuses to speak. He's asking for someone named Ranger. He's asking for you." Eli froze. Ranger wasn't just any dog. He was Carter's partner, trained and retired years ago. But he had thought Ranger was gone, that the dog had left this world long ago. And yet, the boy was calling for him. He drove to the hospital without another word. Inside, the boy was awake, lying under thick blankets. His eyes tracked Eli's every move, and when Eli spoke his name, the boy flinched. "I'm Eli," he said quietly. "I'm the one who found you." The boy's lips moved, forming words Eli could barely hear. "He is still out there." Eli leaned closer. "Who's out there?" The boy didn't answer, only tightened his grip on the blanket. Nurse Callahan watched from the doorway, her brow furrowed. "He won't talk. Says he needs his dog. He keeps saying Ranger." Eli nodded. "I know." That evening, Eli returned to the ridge alone. The wind had grown sharper, cutting through his coat like glass. The trees whispered under the weight of snow, their branches groaning. Somewhere deep in the forest, there was movement. Slow, deliberate. Ranger. Eli knew it. He followed the sound, boots crunching in snow, heart pounding. Deeper into the woods, the air became colder, heavier, almost unnatural. Then the sound stopped. Silence. Ahead, in a small clearing, the snow was trampled, and there, lying in a shallow depression, was the blanket. It was torn, frostbitten, but unmistakable. Eli stepped closer, and a sudden sound made him freeze, a low growl, deep and resonant. Ranger emerged from the shadows. Older, slower, his fur streaked with white, but his eyes, those eyes were the same. He approached Eli, stopping just short. He looked at the blanket, then back at Eli, and let out a deep, mournful whine. Eli crouched. "What happened here?" Ranger stepped back, then disappeared into the trees again. Eli felt an unease that went deeper than fear. It was a warning. Something buried here wasn't meant to be found. Back at the station, Eli found the symbol from the boy's wrist burned into his mind. He pulled out old case files, looking for a match. His search led him to a decades-old incident. A missing child case from Pine Hollow, 25 years ago. The boy's name, Micah Dalton. His disappearance was never solved. His parents blamed an unknown guardian they swore protected him, and in the margin of the report was the same symbol Eli had seen. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. A low voice spoke, calm but firm. "Stop looking for the boy. You don't know what you found." The line went dead. Eli's hand shook. That voice, it was a warning. But Eli knew he couldn't stop now. Ranger had led him here for a reason. And whatever reason it was far from over. That night, Eli sat at his desk with Ranger's old collar in front of him. He turned it over in his hand, noticing a faint engraving. The same symbol. His mind raced. Ranger had been carrying that boy through the snow for a reason, and the truth was buried somewhere in the cold. Outside, the wind rose again, carrying a sound Eli couldn't identify. A low whine, distant but deliberate, a calling. Eli stepped to the window. Somewhere out there, Ranger was calling, and something dark was listening. The night had fallen hard over Pine Hollow. Snow drifted in heavy sheets, muffling sound and draping the town in a pale silence. Inside his apartment, Eli Carter sat hunched over Ranger's collar. The engraving, that strange circle with 3 intersecting lines, pressed into his mind like a puzzle piece. He could almost place but never quite fit. His phone lay face up on the table. The unknown number from last night was still etched into the screen. Eli stared at it, fingers tight around a coffee mug. Somewhere deep inside, he knew the call wasn't a warning. It was a challenge. By morning, he was on the ridge again. The weather was worse. Snow fell in sheets so thick it was hard to see more than a few yards. The forest loomed dark and silent, But Eli's instincts drew him deeper. Ranger was out there somewhere. The boy, Micah, was out there somewhere too. He followed a faint trail of paw prints and shallow drags, the same marks from a night before. They led him to a cluster of pines where the snow was disturbed and the air smelled faintly of iron and smoke. Beneath the snow was something hidden, something buried for years. Eli dug with his gloved hands, each movement slow, careful. The deeper he dug, the more he realized this wasn't just snow. It was compacted earth, frozen solid over something far older. His breath fogged in the cold air as he uncovered the edge of a wooden box, ancient and splintered, carved with the same symbol that marked the boy's wrist and Ranger's collar. A low growl echoed behind him. Eli froze. Ranger stepped out from the trees, older now, but with the same unwavering stare. The dog stepped closer, resting his head gently on Eli's shoulder. His breath was warm, ragged. Eli understood without words. The box was a truth. He pulled the lid open. Inside was a bundle wrapped in cloth, old and frayed. Beneath it, carefully folded, was the body of a boy, preserved almost as if in sleep. Beside the body was a letter, brittle with age, written in faded ink. He is the guardian. The boy belongs to the snow. Protect him. Keep him safe until he is ready. The words made no sense at first, but as Eli looked down, the truth struck him like ice water. The boy inside was not dead in the usual way. This was no ordinary child. Micah Dalton had been missing for decades, yet here was his body, untouched by time except for frost and memory. Ranger had not just found a boy in need. He had found the boy he was bound to guard. The wind shifted, carrying a low whisper through the trees. It wasn't human speech. It was something older, something broken. Eli could almost hear Micah's voice through it. Don't let them take me. The truth came crashing down. The unknown caller had been trying to stop him from finding this. There were others, people who had guarded this secret for generations. The symbol was their mark. Ranger had carried Micah across years of silence to bring him home, to this place of safety. Eli stepped back, closing the box. Ranger gave one last mournful whine and turned toward the forest. He disappeared into the snow without looking back. Eli stood there, frozen, knowing he would never see the dog again. At the station, Eli presented his findings to Captain Harlan. Harlan's face was unreadable, but his hands trembled slightly as he looked over the box and the letter. This changes everything, he said quietly. You've uncovered something we were never meant to know. Eli nodded. It wasn't just a rescue. Ranger brought him here for a reason. Harlan hesitated. We need to decide how much of this Pine Hollow should know, and whether the truth is safe to tell. Eli left the station without answering. Outside, snow fell in heavy silence. He thought of the boy in the hospital bed, Micah, the lost child. Somewhere deep in the forest, Ranger's spirit was finally at peace. That night, Eli returned to the ridge one last time. The snow was untouched, as though nothing had ever been buried there. No tracks, no blanket, just quiet. Eli knelt in the snow, closing his eyes. Somewhere, far beyond his reach, he could still hear a low, protective whine. And then silence. He rose slowly, knowing some truths were not meant to be told, but still carried forever. The case file on Micah Dalton was closed. Ranger service ended quietly, without ceremony. But Eli Carter knew something no one else would ever understand. In that cold, forgotten ridge, a bond older than time had been fulfilled. And in the heart of Pine Hollow, beneath the snow, a boy's story was finally at rest.